2014 OkoumeFest Challenge. What made this challenge a little unique is that it was the first time it had been run, which means no one had any prior knowledge of any campsites or any details on what to expect on the trip. And I was a little worried about camping, places to camp, so I decided to bring along this mounting system for my hammock where I could mount it on my tract. So the trade-off I made was I would carry extra weight and bulk, but it would give you more camping options. So I would go a little slower on the trip, but I could camp at more marginal places. So anyway, we launched at 7 a.m. in a small craft advisory, which meant we had to have reef points in. Went under the Bay Bridge, and the water's pretty rough out here off Kent Island that morning, and had to do a little bit of tacking to round the tip. But after we round the tip, it was more with the wind, so flew my spinnaker here and made good time over here to the first filter. At this point, C.O. Jones and Puma's boat was too tall to get through at the higher tide, so they had to wait a couple hours for the water level to go down for them to squeeze through. But the rest of us went through and made good time getting down here. And Kent Narrows is notorious for strong currents, but this year the water was with us, so we went right on through without any problem. It was really quite easy. The year before it was kind of rough going here, I remember. So we're coming down here with the wind. You can see the lines are nice and straight, which means no tacking, so that was easy sailing. Rounded a little tip here for the circumnavigation of Roy Island. And here, depending on which point of sail we were, had to tack sometimes and other times didn't. So it was the wind was kind of light here, so it's kind of a nice circumnavigation. There's a bunch of us going around at about the same time. I saw Corsair, Badger, Dances with Waves off in the distance, heavily laden, Conqueror the Useless, and maybe a couple others too. So we stopped in checkpoint 1, hit our OK button, waited a bit, and then continued on. And once we got out here, though, the eastern bay here was kind of rough at this point. So a bunch of us, including myself, decided to go ahead and camp at the tip of Tigman Island here. There are all these trees down here on the tip, but there are nice beaches here. So if you can kind of find a way in between the fallen trees to get to the beach, you can usually find a good place to camp. Some people, though, decide to forsake camping and just cruise on down here and take advantage of the wind, like Jolly Roger and C.O. Jones and Puma, and they, of course, had really good times on the trip because they got to take advantage of all that wind while the rest of us were sleeping. And then in days ahead, the wind kind of died, and they're all done with the course by then, and the rest of us were hating life paddling. So, but anyway, we slept here the next morning, got up and started cruising down here. I think all this was close hauled, or there's no tacking necessary, so it was a nice run down the coast. Everything in yellow is the second day. My goal was to make the second bridge down here on that second day and go a little farther. I think I stopped here for a little break and kept on going. Everything the yellows again is the second day. I tacked here a bit to get around this little hump here. Then here's the second bridge here, and there's a lot of adverse current coming back through here on the time I went through, so I had to paddle really hard just to exceed the current to get through. And by this time it was dark, so I was very interested in finding a camping place, and I think this place wasn't suitable, so I had to keep going. So finally I got lucky and found a place right over here. It's a little small beach that I had to pull my tract kind of up a little incline, so it was kind of at an angle once I had it securely stored, so I couldn't use my hammock contraption to sleep here, but I did find some little trees to pitch my hammock, so I was able to sleep there that night. The wind was really howling all night long, though, so people who decided not to camp probably made a lot of good distance that night. But the next morning I got up, the wind was still blowing good, so I was able to take advantage of that and made a lot of good time coming down here. And one thing I remember about this day, day number 3 here, is just there were just these huge expanses of water that we passed without touching down on shore. Now I guess we could have hit some of these little shores here, but that just would have added extra distance. So those of us who wanted to do the shortest possible course just spent a lot of time in the water. I just felt like I was living in my cockpit. But anyway, here's Jane's Island. There's a lot of nice beaches here. But anyway, we came through here where the course was designed to stop at checkpoint 2. Met Chief, chatted with him a bit, refilled my water, and then pushed off again because it was kind of midday here, too early to the camp for me. So I had to do a lot of tacking just to get out of here because I was against the wind going through this part. By the time I got out here, the wind just died, so I just had to straight paddle this all the way over to Smith Island. This is kind of slow going, all this paddling. So it was getting dark by this point. So I needed to get to some place to camp, so I just had to paddle through this. There are a lot of really buggy in here, a lot of bugs. And I went through the little fishing village, and then navigating by GPS and shore beacons, I went around the rock jetty, and I was hoping to find a nice little beach over here somewhere. It looked like on Google Earth there were beaches, but it was just mud flats, no beaches. So I did find one place. I decided to put my hammock contraption to the test. So I found a mud flat about 1.5 feet above the water, but this was kind of a low tide, so I just pulled my track up on top of it. It was firm enough to support my weight in the triac, and I set up my hammock contraption and slept for maybe 2 or 3 hours before I started hearing the water sloshing around with the tide coming in. So I got up and packed it up and pushed off while it was still dark. I don't even know if I got a REM cycle in. Maybe I did, but I was, I didn't really have any choice. So I got out here and I was sailing again, and then the sun came up, and then once I could see, I was able to see on this next island there were some actual beaches that were okay. So I went ashore and actually got my cook gear out and cooked some breakfast, and was able to keep going. And I guess I had a little pit stop here too. So then I started heading here. This is all kind of close hauled. I was kind of fortunate with didn't have to tack here. But when I got up here, the story kind of changed. With the angle of this island, and the wind was basically coming right down here. So you had no choice but here but the tack. And I was getting a little frustrated and tired with my lack of sleep and all the paddling necessary. Even though I was tacking, I had to paddle while I sailed to improve my pointing angle enough to kind of make it worth it. So I kind of hit my low point about here. I just decided to beach it here, put my sail up to cast a little shadow because it was pretty hot and sunny. I took a little bit of a 2-hour nap right here. That kind of revived me. So then I got up and continued on, tacking out of here, and finally got to a point where I could go back to kind of close hauled sailing. So I it's kind of getting towards the evening here, and right about here I hit my first thunderstorm. So we had the downdraft and all the wind and the lightning and all that worry, and I beached it a couple times just to kind of ride the storms out, and but I still had another couple hours of daylight, so I decided not to camp over here, although I could have. There were some nice beaches here, although it was pretty buggy and marshy. So I decided to keep going and just trust I can find something a little farther down here. So here's the blue track is this day I'm doing, and by now it was getting dark. And my Google Earth research showed there were some potential beaches over here, but once I got here, it's all mud flats again. And I didn't really feel like doing that again with the mud flat. Since I did it once, it kind of proved I could do it. So I decided to press on and see if I could just get lucky with a little bit better camping situation. And I did find something over here, a real short beach that I could partially pull my track up on, but part of it would still have to be floating in the water. So I set my hammock contraption up again and got a couple more hours of sleep, and then pushed off the next morning at daybreak. And here again it was, I got another thunderstorm. So thunderstorm number 2 in the morning right here. Another downdraft and cold air, wind, and all that stuff. So so now I'm in the magenta color, heading out here. At this point I'm starting to get a little bit worried about water. I'm trying to find a marine service area where I can refill some water, because I think I had a leak in my main bladder. But at this one point I got a little confused on what landmass, and I went the wrong way for a little bit to this point when I was meaning to go to this point. But I found myself corrected and made it over here to Tigman Island, and there's a little marina right over here, right through the cut through. So I stopped here and bought some water from the guy, and he gave me a complimentary Mountain Dew, which was kind of tasted pretty good at that point in the trip. So at this point I decided just to make a beeline to the finish. It was still early enough in the day where I could make it, hopefully by sunset. So pushed out again here and just made a beeline to Kent Island. And right about in the middle here, it always happens kind of in the midpoint of a crossing, another huge thunderstorm came through. This is a whammy, a doozy. And I got the full meal deal here. I got the torrential rain, the downdraft, and lightning all around me. And so, but fortunately I was not hit and came away unscathed, and got a little bit of residual wind to kind of propel me kind of a little bit here, so I didn't have to paddle as hard all the way to the tip of Kent Island. But then after that the wind died again. Sometimes after a thunderstorm it'll be really, really calm, and it was that case here. So I had to paddle this whole 8 miles, which seemed like forever. Psychologically, you get to the tip of Kent Island, you think you're about done, but there's quite a bit of work left to be done. And then I finally got a little break on the wind right towards the end. I got to, didn't have to paddle so hard, but finally made it in here right after sunset. I remember watching the sun go down. And I think Dancing with Waves got in about 4 hours after me, and we were the last 2 who finished. And it was a good trip, but I was really felt it the next day or two, just how exhausted I was after the trip. But it was a fun one. It was what I consider a true challenge, and for me I think this one was harder than the Everglade Challenge, just that I did 2 years ago, just because of all the paddling I had to do.